meeting I get to run, but
is
closed session, joint advisory.
Nothing was done to update. It was kept clean. It was still original bathrooms.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Ken, can we get a roll call vote?
Certainly. Blackburn.
Present.
Hageman.
Here.
Hedge.
Here.
Howard.
Present?
Jones.
Here.
Craybill. Here. Mashigian.
Here.
All right, you have 7 members out of 7.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of the agenda?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Do I hear a motion for the approval of the regular council meeting minutes from March 25th, 2024?
I move to approve those minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. For the President's message tonight, I am going to read something from Oakland Community Health Network for Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May 2024. We are usually asked to read the proclamation, so I am going to do that in recognition of this month. Whereas mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, it affects how we think, feel, and act. It also affects how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And whereas mental health is important to our individual well-being and vitality, as well as that of our families, communities, and businesses. And whereas Mental Health America's MHA 2023 State of Mental Health in America survey ranks Michigan as 25th in the nation for prevalence of mental illness and 20th in the nation for access to care. And whereas May 1st through May 31st, 2024 is recognized as Mental Health Awareness Month. MHA's 2024 theme is Where to Start, Mental Health is in a Changing World, which highlights getting back to the basics, including self-care, coping skills, advocating for mental health, and knowing when to seek additional help. And whereas Oakland Community Health Network joins our national partners in promoting this year's Where to Start campaign, and whereas mental health management ensures that individuals can focus on their abilities to live, work, learn, and fully participate and contribute to our society while promoting diversity, inclusion, and acceptance. And whereas improved systems of care for vulnerable populations, access to non-emergent and crisis services, advanced integrated physical and behavioral health care, along with provider relations, help to fortify services coordinated by OCHN. And whereas Oakland Community Health Network and its service provider agencies are committed to inspiring hope, empowering people, and strengthening communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Oakland Community Health Network hereby recognize May 2024 as Mental Health Awareness Month. OCHN calls upon our citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, faith-based organizations, and schools to recommit our state to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illnesses to promote recovery and a higher quality of life. We are going to move on to public comment, not on the published agenda. Seeing none, our first discussion topic is the Fire Department Monthly Report. Chief Everbach is here to report that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You have my written report, and I hope the format is okay. This is the first month that we've used it. If there are any tweaks or any requests, let me know, and I will try and have one of our firefighters who does our IT figure out how to write the program, because I don't understand the software, but data comes in, data goes out. So anyway, other than that, working on our inspections. We haven't done any through the end of March, but this morning we started inspections for the calendar year 2024, and those started with the Bingham Center, 30,600, 700, 800. Other than that, there's really nothing significant to report, other than our run numbers do remain high, with the majority being that of EMS. Also, I guess the only other thing is that Trustee Hedge advised of the change in management over at Bingham Woods. So we've been corresponding back and forth with some of the things the old management company had been doing, so that we can continue on with good work and coverage. Pending your questions, that'll conclude my report.
Are there any questions?
I have none.
Great.
I think the report was easy to read, really
Thank you.
easier, so
Good.
it's looking good.
Trying. Thank you. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We're going to go a little bit out of order this time because we have some special items for Chief Roberts. So we're going to move to the manager's report. Ken?
Thank you. Two things. One involves Chief Averbuck as he's walking out the door. We do have a Meet the Chief, a Q&A session with Chief Averbuck scheduled for Tuesday, May 7th in this room. Residents will be able to come in and ask the chief about operations and anything else regarding the fire department. So that's on the calendar, and we will be accepting sign-up sheets or names for sign-up and whatnot, similar to the Invasive Species Summit that we have coming up. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we are having a length of sidewalk replaced on north of 13 Mile. East of the school, there was some cracking and heaving of the sidewalk due to this large mature tree growing. They're actually moving the sidewalk around the tree. It should be completed this week. It's about a $3,000 job, but it's pretty necessary. I kind of wanted them to do it after the school year ended, but schedules are schedules. That's that.
Are there any questions for the manager?
Who bears the cost of $3,000?
You do. The village does. We are required every so many years to spend some dollars on non-motorized transportation as a requirement of Act 51 dollars we receive from the state for road maintenance. It's not a lot. It's not a big sliver of it at all. This would qualify for that.
Okay.
Which is nice to use it for some of those, I don't know, higher used sidewalks and that sort of thing, because we don't have a whole lot of
That's true.
Can we
non-motorized.
get that into this year's budget?
Pardon me?
Can we get that payment into this year's budget?
I would hope so, yes. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Administrative Assistant / Economic Development Coordinator report. Evgeny, do you have anything?
Ken already briefly mentioned that we have a Bingham Farms invasive species event happening next Monday, which is April 29th. It's going to be right here in this room. And as of end of the workday today, we had 16 people that are planning on attending that.
16. Wow.
16, not 60, yes. 16. Since this room is a little limited in space, I'm going to see how the week progresses and how the sign-ups progress. If it looks like we start getting a little bit out of hand for this, I might add a Zoom feature to that event as well, so that people can attend remotely. And since this is not an event that's governed by the Open Meetings Act, the people on Zoom will be able to ask the presenter questions as well. So,
Good job.
just in case anybody's watching this meeting, if that does happen, there will be an announcement on the village website.
Thank you for organizing that.
I do have a question. You went to a leadership training conference?
Yes.
And one of the items that they talked about is how to communicate potential and ongoing projects to the residents more effectively. Was there any pearls of wisdom that may apply to us in communicating with the road projects to our residents in the future?
It wasn't so much any kind of new or novel or different approaches to communication other than what we are using. It's more of a strategies about when, in the course of any kind of major project or undertaking, is it strategically better to start getting that information out to the residents so that you're not too early and you don't get people too excited too early, so you're not too late and people are all of a sudden, surprised by a big groundbreaking operation next door. So it was more so things like that, not that there's necessarily any kind of novel or unexplored means of communications that we're not using.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Thank you. Moving on to the police department. Chief Roberts is here to present the monthly report, the special assessment district budget presentation, and set a public hearing for the special assessment district, so.
Sounds good. Good evening, everyone. I wanted to mention, right after the, literally, I think the next day after this council meeting last month, there was questions about the South American and Chilean burglary cruise, and then right after that, we had one. And so, let's not talk about that anymore, if we could. No, actually, we're actually pretty lucky compared to some of the other communities in that regard. Bloomfield Township and Bloomfield Hills in particular have been hit several times recently with these South American and Chilean crews, Colombians as well. Again, the FBI estimates that there's over 100 of these crews operating within the country at any one given time. They're very sophisticated. They're generally targeting the same types of house, although ours in the Bingham Woods condos was quite a bit different because they really haven't been hitting condos so many times. Clearly same crew though, because of the way they entered into the home and what they stole from the house indicates that it was the same crew, but mostly they haven't been hitting condo developments. They have in occasion, but that's much more rare than high-end multi-million-dollar homes, estates kind of things where what they've been targeting. As I said before, very sophisticated crew. They are using jamming devices. They are bringing their own collapsible ladders so that they can climb in through second-floor windows on the assumption that the alarms aren't on the second floor windows, that the people probably only put them on the ground floor, and so they could break out glass, which is largely true in many instances. So if anybody out there is listening and they have an alarm system, they might want to consider upgrading to their second floor as well and put glass break alarms on those windows. But I did want to mention that we have had that. The leads that we get on that are almost non-existent. As I said, that it's very difficult because of how professional these crews have been trained. Wearing gloves, wearing face masks. The limited pictures that we do have are no help whatsoever, and they are clearly not leaving behind any evidence. They've been trained very well. So we're working on it. We have a lot of help from the FBI and other federal agencies to work on cell phone extraction data from area towers and things, but that's ongoing and will take quite a while to put that all together.
I have a question.
Yeah.
At Mobile Watch, they mentioned that they're staying at Airbnbs.
Right.
How do they know that they're staying there? And as Lois said, we know a lot of information. Why are we not catching up?
Well, as I said, they're very sophisticated. So the Airbnb issue came up from, there have been some arrests, in this case nationwide, not here locally, one in Indiana, one in Pennsylvania, and I believe one in Massachusetts as well, but I know Pennsylvania and Indiana as well. And the limited interviews that we've gotten some cooperation from those that have been arrested talk about where they stay when they come up here. There are thousands and thousands of Airbnbs,
Right.
so it would be
Hard.
very difficult to do that. And again, they come up here generally, we know that they're using rented vehicles from fly-by-night type auto rental places out of state who are less than cooperative with us and with law enforcement. So it's really going to take either an officer stumbling across them in the course of his patrols, or a resident, since all of you, seeing something suspicious around one of your neighbor's homes and calling us on that. And I think that's likely how they're going to get caught, unfortunately. But yes, and as soon as we catch 3 or 4 of them, there's probably another bunch of crews right behind them, unfortunately, coming right back in. So.
Do they only strike at night?
Yes. Generally speaking, what they're doing, there's exceptions to everything, of course, but generally speaking, their method of operation is about an hour after sunset, because we think what they're doing is hiding out around the home that they're targeting, waiting to see if there's any activity, if any lights come on, if they can see people walking inside, that type of thing. And so, I would say our sweet spot for that is anywhere from, this time of year, anywhere probably from 9 p.m. to midnight would be the sweet spot for that. There's exceptions to it. There's always exceptions. Some have been a little earlier, some have been a little later. I think of all of them, we've had one that even occurred like we know at like 2 o'clock in the morning, which was very unusual. But for our sweet spot for those is late at night from 9, say, to midnight.
Good.
Right now.
Thank you.
To our knowledge, are they bringing weapons?
They are not, and in fact, they are staying away from weapons. In some of the residences, there have been obvious weapons sitting there right next to the jewelry that was stolen, and they didn't touch them. And so they've been trained very well because they don't want that gun charge. That adds 2 years on. If they get caught, that adds a mandatory 2-year gun charge onto their charges. So they're not touching them. We don't think they're bringing them in, and we know they're not taking them out, including the one that we had in Franklin last fall. That homeowner had several firearms in the homes that they clearly did not touch, and they could have if they wanted to. So, which that's a good thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So. Other than that, I wanted to touch on just some administrative things in terms of our hiring. We are, we're in a tough spot right at the present moment. We have some of our officers have been out on surgery, leave unexpectedly. We have one that was injured last week during the course of arrest, did something to his shoulder, so he's off on workers' comp leave. We've had other prearranged vacations. So we've been operating on a skeleton crew for the last, 5, 6, 7 days, waiting for some of these officers to get healthy and come back to work. We're also, as you know, in the process of hiring. We lost one of our senior officers. Kimberly Bonacorsi is retiring in June, and so we've been looking to hire. We think we have a great candidate who's going to start with us next month. She comes to us. Like all of us right now, we're stealing from other departments. Other departments are stealing from us, and we're stealing from them. We're hiring her away from Sylvan Lake Police Department right now, and she has a few years' experience, which is nice, so she should be able to hit the ground running in May. And because I'm leaving later in the summer, we're also looking to hire another person then, and we have some interviews scheduled for that opening later this week. We'll do some interviews on that. Hopefully we'll get another good candidate out of that. But good candidates are scarce right now. It's very difficult and challenging times. We have 11 full-time officers when everybody's here, and then we have authorized for 4 part-time officers. We currently have no part-time officers, which is also a challenge because we use them to fill in when we had injuries or when we have a sickness or a vacation. And one of our part-time officers retired, and the other one went to work for Madison Heights Police Department full-time, and so he left us. And so we're doing the best we can right now, so we're covering as best as we can with everything, but it is our overtime budget is taking a big hit the last month or so, and we'll get through it, though. We always do. We'll find a way to get through it. And that's all I have for the actual police report, unless you had questions for me. Yes, sir.
I know that you helped present the proposed changes to the police contract to the Franklin Village Council, and that they tabled it for a month. Is there anything we need to know about that in terms of whether they have any questions or?
Yeah, honestly, I missed that council meeting. Deputy Chief Kurt Lawson handled that for me. I wasn't here. I didn't hear any questions. There have certainly been no concerns raised. I don't know why they tabled it, to tell you the truth. I'll have to get back to you on that. But from our discussions with Roger Frazier, the village administrator, and with the village president over there, most of other than the time frame question in that contract, all those other things that you recommended, they approved. As far as I know, the police department had no objection to them.
All right, thank you.
So I don't know of any. I have not been informed of any concern about that. I don't know why they tabled it. Maybe it's because I wasn't there. Honestly, I don't know.
One member hadn't read it, hadn't had a chance to read it beforehand, and wanted a month to review it.
Okay. Do you know who that was, by chance? Because I could touch base with him.
I don't know his name.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll find out. And if they have any questions, I'll be glad to answer for them. So
Great.
I would just mention I had the opportunity to meet one of your officers who has been patrolling quite a bit in front of the school in the mornings, and he's doing a great job. I mean, a couple days I've seen him there, he's picked up speeders, and when his presence is there for the next week, I notice, as we walk down there every day, I notice, a lot better driving behavior. In fact, when someone was tailgating me through it and honking at me going through the school zone, and he was sitting in our lane.
Oh.
And when I pulled in, he pulled right out
Oh.
to get him. So I don't,
Good.
I wish I knew the officer's name, but he's a young gentleman
Young gentleman, okay, tall.
in a truck. I've never seen
Yeah.
him get out. But
Yes,
yeah,
that's, I know who it is. It's Kevin O'Shea is his name, yes.
Fantastic job.
Yeah, it's Kevin. He does a great job. So thank you. I'll pass that on. I appreciate the kind words.
Well, I welcomed him to use our lane anytime. All mornings
Yeah.
available, so, yeah.
Yeah, when their standing order is that if they're not doing it, if they're not pulled away on other calls or anything, to hit
Yeah.
both of our schools that we have as much as they can during the
Yeah.
drop-off and pickup
Do a
time.
great
So-
job.
So, yeah. That's all I have there, unless you want me to go right into the SAD budget?
Yeah, keep
or-
going.
So, okay, so I provided Bill and Ken with this a few weeks ago. Hey, how are you? The SAD budget, just for those of you that may be new and not familiar with this, the funding that we get for 2 officers through the SAD really doesn't cost the village of Bingham Farms anything. The Bingham Farms is just a pass-through. It's collected from the 25 or so owners of those buildings, and they pay for 2 officers and everything that goes with those officers, training, dispatch, their health insurance, you name it. This year, it's up like it is every year. It's usually up 3 to 4% every year. Largely year on year, those are due to health insurance cost increases and any contractual increases that the officers are due because of their union contract. The officers' union contract is up at the end of this year, this calendar year, so they'll be negotiating a new contract at that time, which makes it a budget challenge for me because I don't really know exactly how much they're going to get in their new contract. And so I usually just include a 3 to 4% increase in their salaries in my budget, because that's typically what it is year on year, is they end up with 3. Now, it has been more than that and it has been less than that, but that's pretty much an average, is 3 or 4%. So I budget for that, but that's something that it could change. I'll just throw that out there. That could change one way or the other, and that's probably won't be lower, but it could change higher. Other than that, we did save some money this year in terms of our retiree health care costs, because we had some of our older retirees fall off the system when they hit 65. So we actually saved some money in our budget this year, even though healthcare costs went up generally for the on-duty commitment. It went down in our retiree side, so that was kind of nice. But in any event, so the number we're looking at is for this year's request is $401,490.58, and just for last year, so you know, it was $390,000 last year, $532,000. So it's up about 3 to 4% year on year from last year's budgeted amount. Again, next month, I believe, we'll set it up for public hearing. We'll get a chance for the business owners to come in and ask any questions that they want to about the budget and see if they have any disagreement with any of the calculations. I am happy to sit down with any of them and talk about how this number comes about. So if there is any pushback to you all from any of them, I'm happy to tell them how it's calculated. Over the years, they've been very supportive, I must say, of the police department as a general rule. There's always 1 or 2 that might not be as supportive, but overall, the owners have been, I should only say 1 owner that I can say hasn't been supportive over the years, but all the other ones have been, and they realize that they're getting good service out of this. They see the police officers out there that are writing parking tickets, they're assisting with lockouts of people with keys in their car, and they're answering alarms and everything else that they do. So I think they're getting a good bang for their buck there. So that's all I have for you, and so that's our proposed SAD budget for next fiscal year.
Are there any questions about that? Okay, then we need to set the public hearing. We're going to set the public hearing for May 20th, 2024. On the necessity of the SAD and to review the SAD role for fiscal year 2024-2025. Would anybody like to offer that resolution?
I would move the resolution that was provided in our materials.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Blackbird.
Aye.
Hageman.
Aye.
Hedge.
Aye.
Howard.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Craybill.
Aye.
Mashigian.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you.
And I will provide you with a written narrative, as I always do, that gives a little background and history of the SAD, how it was created back in 1986. And then more importantly, it has a matrix attached to the back part of it that shows all of the crime rates that were happening back then in 86 through every year up until the present. And you can see exactly how much crime has stayed in check after that SAD was created. So it's kind of a nice thing to have.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you for coming. Moving on to the Roads Project Advisory Committee update. One of our liaisons like to speak to that?
I really don't have, other than we're, still talking, still got a number of things happening. We've got another presentation coming up on Wednesday, and I think we can start making some inroads as to choice of words, as to what we want to present back to council.
I agree, and I would just add that there were two items that I think the committee was asking for a little bit of direction from this council, and the first had to do with the fact that one of the members has suggested a possible strategy for getting people on private roads more comfortable with doing the public roads, and that was the possibility of maybe having a private road community who maybe was thinking about redoing their roads, sort of piggyback onto public work that we were doing and maybe getting a better rate. And she asked whether this council wanted us to start with doing, finding out whether there were such communities ahead of time, or whether we just wanted to wait until the entire proposal was recommendations were brought before the council, so that we could, if we could provide some guidance on that, I think it would be helpful. Yes.
Just to clarify, the village wouldn't be paying for anything, because I
Correct.
don't think that's allowed, but they would just be leveraging sort of the equipment's here, so the company would give you a better rate. I just want to make sure legally there's no...
It would just be an economies of scale thing. I think that's what they're talking about.
Okay, so
Correct.
that's not, okay. Got it.
Have we gotten indication from any possible contractors that actually would or might take place? That there would be a reduction, or is it just an assumption?
Well, this particular person has actually worked on projects like this in Beverly Hills, and I think in Beverly Hills, I think she had some success in doing that. But whether a contractor now would do it, we have no idea, because we haven't, the committee has not done anything other than raise the idea. So I have no idea whether a contractor would do it. I have no idea whether any of the private roads communities would be interested.
Well, we are, on behalf of Outland Trail, that's on our radar for the next 5-year window. And from what I'm hearing, that might fall into the range of some happening with the projects.
It might.
But the other thing is that I was listening to the video and watching the video, and there was discussion about special assessments, and there was an allocation of responsibility, Ken, that I think you had different individuals who were going to be doing different things. I didn't quite catch who, if anyone, was going to tackle the possibility of special assessments, which you had brought up.
Well, you're pointing right at him.
Yeah.
One of the other committee members and I are working on that with Ken, and in fact, we had a meeting with Dirk about do's and don'ts legally about that. We don't have a proposal that's ready yet. I think we might be talking about one on Wednesday, but it's not in final form, but there is people are proceeding along.
So that option is still going to be viably explored.
Yes,
Yes.
it is.
Mhm.
So is there some consensus as to whether we should start contacting private roads people now, or wait until, it's only, I guess, another month now, I think they're going to present at our May meeting. Does anybody have any thoughts one way or the other that we could bring back to the
It seems
committee?
very hypothetical at this point.
It
I
is.
mean, and it seems like no matter what the proposal was, that's an option. So I'm not sure we can add anything to it.
We did have a meeting in our group in September, and I asked about, the thoughts on whether or not they would vote in favor of some kind of community-wide funding, and they said, why? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we have to pay for our roads. Nobody's going to come and help us pay for our private roads. So tell me more as to why we should vote yes. I thought to myself, we have to really start thinking about this, because no matter what we put forward, and that's why I asked whether or not there was any kind of strategies or anything being revealed in the meetings that Yev went to as to how to deal with this communication issue that's going to become, I believe, with 51% of the votes, Kurt.
Right, and I can assure you that I raise that at about every meeting, and that there's one other person on the committee who also lives in a private road, and she's also very active in raising it. Now,
Yeah, but I didn't sense the tone of the whole group leaning towards that as one of the viable options.
well, I can't speak for the group. I just know that there are people working on it, and the person I'm working on it with does not live on a private road, but he's convinced that it would be a good idea to at least have an option involving a special assessment to bring to this council, just so that we would have an option. I can't make any guarantees, but your concern has been raised more than once.
Okay.
I think it's back to your original question. I think it's hard to reach out to a community and ask them, because you'll say, well, when is it? Next year? 2 years from now? That's all
Okay.
on what you're working on. So I think that I would suggest that any proposal have the option for private communities to join in and to try to get economies of scale and better funding. I think it's just leave it at that. I'm
Okay.
not sure what, without more details. We just redid our road. If you told me that I could get that 5 years from now, I might be interested, but I didn't.
Right.
But if I don't know if the road going past, well, not my road, but a road near me is getting fixed for next year, we would say no. So our answer would probably differ, and I would imagine other communities might feel, other developments might feel the same way. But I think it's a good thing to have as an option.
Okay. And then the second thing that they requested some feedback is that we had a very interesting proposal by one of the members about possibly forming a development fund for Bingham Farms.
Oh, yeah.
And the theory behind this, and correct me if I misstated or something like that, DE, because going from memory and, getting older. But the theory is that it would be, once established, it would be a separate, legal entity, and the purpose would be to raise money for the village. I think the presenter feels that, we're talking about the roads in terms of this particular time when the roads are bad, but he suggests, and I don't disagree with him, that given the size of our community and the fact that we have to have a police force, we have to have a fire department, our resources might not match the income structure that we have, and it might be a good idea to set up a development fund to try and raise funds, not only for this road project, but maybe the next road project, or who knows what other needs we might have coming down the road. And he's, I think, very well spoken, and I think a very smart guy, and I think sort of works in this area. And I asked him specifically, would he be willing to be involved in helping with this? And he said that he would, but that he would need someone on the council. In fact, I believe he said the president of the council to work with him on it, just as sort of the voice, of the village, because he doesn't have a specific role in the village. The theory would be that you would raise money from corporations, private individuals, and so on and so forth to be used for village projects. The issue is that it sounds to me like it would take a considerable amount of time
That was my thought, yeah.
and effort to set this up. And not that I don't think it's a good idea, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know whether we have the resources to develop.
Is this philanthropic?
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
To the
So
point- to the-
501c3?
Yeah, to the point of where it would end up being its own entity funded to itself. So that it would be an ongoing thing, and then they would then pick and choose. We would ask them as a village, hey, we need extra money for this, and then they would then grant us that money. And that kind of sounds like what, I'm taking it maybe to the end of it, but that's kind of what I took out of it too.
He anticipated if you got this thing up and running and it was like bringing in $250,000 a year or something like that, you would actually like hire someone to run it.
To run it.
You know, the person would have to be, I think, someone who had experience like raising funds, because that's basically what the role would be.
Yeah, a professional fundraiser.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting concept. I'm just not sure whether,
It's like a community
I'm not sure whether we have the
foundation.
resources to be able to do it.
Like a community foundation?
Very similar to that, yes. I don't think it's legally, I don't think it's the same entity legally. I think it's a slightly different entity, but it's very similar to a community foundation.
Is this money invested? Is that how it grows?
I would assume that
Yeah.
the money would be
Because he
invested.
said that, because I asked him what the cost would be, and he said it would be, his educated guess, what was it, 80 to 90,000 a year?
For administering this
Yes.
Yeah.
fund. There are scales. At my sail club, we have North Star Junior Sailors, and that is a 501c3, and people can make a donation to that organization, who then turns around and buys little day sailors for the kids and helps to fund teachers who teach the kids to sail. So there is a direct relationship with
Right.
where the money is being spent.
Nice.
I love the idea, I'm just struggling on it. Like, who would donate to this? I mean, I guess the idea is it's a tax-deductible donation, but this is not a struggle.
Roads are not sexy.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
And they're
I'm
not
just
kids.
struggling with how you would raise the funds.
A park might be sexy,
Yeah,
but roads are not.
I have this aversion to going and asking anybody for money, you know, so I'm definitely not the right person to answer that question. I think, all I can tell you is that he seems fairly confident that could be done from like foundations and so on and so forth, and even like wealthy individuals in the community. I don't know enough about, I just know that I would not be any good at it.
Yeah.
You know, part of me says that it sounds really like a good idea to pursue, but what's in it for the investors? What do they get?
Tax deduction,
Yeah.
And that's it.
if it's structured properly, it would be a tax deduction.
Right,
If
well,
it's-
any donation of a certain size, isn't it a percentage of their income they can do? And I don't know, there's all sorts of terms and conditions, but I was just curious. I wasn't sure.
Well, with itemized deductions disappearing, that onus for contributions has really fallen down by the wayside.
Yeah.
So it's got to be one's personal feelings for why they're giving the money
Yeah.
without something in return.
This is actually something that I had just written a note and asked Ken to look into when he gets back from vacation, to possibly have this individual come and speak to the group and answer questions and sort of lay it out. So, you know, thank you for presenting that, unless you have something else
No,
to say about
no.
it. But I think, I don't want to get into a bunch of speculation about it. I think we should call him in and see what his thoughts are and ask the questions. So that'll be
Are we
in the
aware
future.
of any communities in Michigan that have anything like this?
Auburn Hills does. They don't have it for roads, but they have the Auburn Hills Foundation. It's controlled by a separate board of directors. It's a nonprofit 501c3 corporation. That, setting that up takes at least, maybe not a year, but 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
To set it up. Then you've got to find the investors, and then a separate board of directors is deciding whether to give the money to Auburn Hills. But Auburn Hills does have a model like that you can look at. Again, not specifically for roads, but for general municipal projects.
Beautification projects,
Yeah. All kinds of different things.
yeah.
And there may be others that just go around.
Are public comments allowed at this point?
I believe Franklin has a community foundation just like that.
Franklin?
Franklin, yeah, and I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to us and share that information.
Yes, I know they have a community foundation, and we've tossed around the words community foundation for a few years. So we'll see what he thinks, because I think his thoughts are like hundreds of thousands of
I think his thoughts are
dollars.
grander than
So-
your average community foundation that
Right.
pays for flower planting and things of that nature. So I'd rather hear from him,
Right.
frankly. And we could have him come May, June, July, something like, whatever fits the schedule.
If we could do some kind of funds transfer for something that is sexy within the budget to be handled by the foundation, and then divert that money into the roads. I mean, that's the truth of it. That's what you'd have to do. I mean, if we had flowers that we planted or trees that we planted, let's take it from the foundation. But we don't have those things.
Yeah, we don't really have anything
That's
flashy and pretty. Do you have anything else?
No.
No?
That about covers it.
Okay. Thank you for continuing to work so diligently. I have gotten word that things are going very well, and there's confidence that it'll be presented to us.
Yeah, I know some people thought we were going a little, a little slow, but we've gotten ideas and stuff, I think, that nobody even thought about before. So I think that part's good.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving to new business. I asked that the library contract be put on the agenda. Really, it's just sort of it's early, but just as a discussion, sort of informational topic, because our library contract will be coming up, but we can't really do, it's just flipping over this year. But it seems like that's the only thing in our budget that's sort of discretionary, and I hear people talk about the library, so I just wanted to give a little bit of background on it. It renews every 2 years, unless we terminate the agreement 6 months prior. The current agreement will expire July 1st, 2026, which means we would really, if we were to decide to terminate it, and that's not what I'm advocating for, but we would really need to make that decision by December of 2025. So Trustee Jones did negotiate in 2020 with the library board so that our portion would not increase more than 3% per year. And our portion is tiny compared to other communities. But we are paying a portion. So we know that it's only going to go up 3% a year, which I think was great to get that put into the contract. This year, our library services are costing $129,072. Next year, it will go up 3%, which will be $132,942. So, like I said, I'm not advocating to get rid of library services in any way, shape, or form, but this will be coming up in the future, in 2025, and so it came to my attention because the contract is automatically renewing, and I just want to make sure that as we're talking about the future, that people are at least aware of how that contract works. Yes.
So just to be clear, it's renewing July 1st, 2024, but we're past the cutoff.
We're past the cutoff. Right.
So we have 2 more years of this no matter what.
Right.
There's no other provisions, I think, that allowed us to exit if we wanted to.
Right. Right.
And then we pay per year even though it's every 2 years. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yes.
Right.
So this year it's 132,000 plus. Is that correct?
It will be
It will
for
be,
this
okay.
coming year.
And the percentage of increase was 3%?
Yeah.
3%.
Madam President, at the board meeting this month for Baldwin, I asked specifically if they had any numbers about our participation. How many cardholders and checkouts there have been, and from July to June of 2023, they had 542 cardholders and 7,053 checkouts. So that's about half our population is a cardholder. I don't know how to put a value on that number.
That's for a year.
Yeah.
Now, does that include, because I do a lot of stuff electronically, so I read off a Kindle. Does that include that also? Or just actual going into the library and physically checking out something?
I think it's total checkouts, which would include the electronic.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
19. I could put a price on this, $19 a checkout.
Well, yeah, for that particular, but the value of having the
Finance
services
guy.
available, I don't know.
I don't want anyone to read that my children use this library, and I think it's a good thing to have. It is, though, by far the largest discretionary item in our budget.
Yeah.
You know, the police, fire, this, and then it becomes very small after that. So I think it is good to talk about it. I happen to be for it. I think it's a good use of our funds, but I think it's important that the group talk about it well in advance of the December 2025 was when the decision will have to be made.
Is there an option for us to renew a partial contract? Say, we'll help you some, but unless there's some dramatic difference in our funding sources, we can't help you as much as we have in the past, proportionately. So maybe our participation goes down to 1.5% or something, but I don't know.
The amount was calculated based on numbers of residents way back when the contract was set. We're paying, I think we happen to be paying 3% of it.
We're paying a very, very small percentage of their
I know,
budget.
but for us, it's a big chunk.
Right, but I think the way I see it is, it's not necessarily like how much per checkout or whatever. It's just that our community is so small and it's a service that we offer. We offer this and next. We don't have a rec department or, you know what I mean? Like, when people are moving here and they're thinking about Bingham Farms, it's one of very few services that we actually offer as a community.
That's a good point.
So, to sort of shave that down, I think we might be cutting off our nose to spite our face kind of thing. And like I said, I'm not advocating to get rid of it at all. I just want everybody to know the facts so that it's bouncing around in your brain as we move forward over the next couple of years and just, it's a cost. It's a big cost.
A discretionary one, that was
Right.
Erin's point. That's the only large discretionary
And
item.
I think people go there as well and don't check things out, so you have people it's nice to know the numbers, but maybe kids go there and study, or people go there and read magazines, or they offer a lot of services there that people may be taking advantage of that we're not capturing in these numbers. So it's a nice service to have. Like I said, I just want to put the numbers out there.
Just more on the number. I mean, it's, for less than 5% of the total budget. It's not, this item doesn't, you take this away the road problem's not solved.
For sure, for sure, for sure.
Right, so I continue to be in favor of it because I think it's important for the community to offer this. Could it be renegotiated with them? I'm sure we should try, but we're paying a fairly small amount.
Just a couple of quick points. First, thanks for the credit, but I also want to mention that Ken was also instrumental in renegotiating the contract with them, and that the contract we had prior to them, we were paying much more than 3% increase a year. We had the worst contract of any of the people that they contract with. And I think Ken, I think you knew the then chairman of the library, in fact, and that was very helpful in the negotiations. Second thing I'd mention is if we didn't do it, if we said, we're not doing this, I don't think that prevents people from going in and sitting in the library and studying and all that sort of stuff. I think it clearly prevents you from checking out books, but I don't think it would mean you couldn't actually go and use the library anymore. And then third, I think if and when people wanted to make a change, I think in terms of your point, Diane, I don't know that they would reduce it more than they already have for us since we renegotiated the contract. But A, we could ask, and B, you can always ask if there's another library that we could go to. Now, I'm as I recall, this is way back when, but I think that the Bloomfield Township Library was actually explored at one time, and at least at one time that was a no-go. Whether that's still the case, I don't know. But I just raise all this in case, a year from now, this council is considering that might be something we might want to do, is to see if there's another library that would be cheaper. That's it.
I can't comment that Bloomfield Township Library apparently raised the rates for Bloomfield Hills, and Bloomfield Hills decided to walk away, and they're now at Baldwin as well. So, it's whatever.
Well, and a lot can happen in the next 2 years. Again, I'm not asking for anybody's, we're not voting or anything like that. I'm not advocating to get rid of the library myself either. This was just more of a informational. The library kind of comes up in conversation.
And another way to
fairly
look at it
often.
would be if, in fact, we have to have a big hit because of the road project, maybe the library will give us a stay with not having a rate increase for X number of years while we attempt to recover road costs. That's just another way to negotiate a contract, maybe.
It's an option,
Yeah.
Well, if I read this right, too, you negotiated that 3% and/or whatever the consumer price index was. So if that goes down, then we would be less.
Right. Let me
So-
know if it goes below 3%.
Probably. I just wanted to mention that. Probably won't. Probably won't, but, yeah.
Last comment, if there is another community there, then clearly going back to trying to renegotiate it might help, because if there's a whole nother community there and they're eating part of the cost, then maybe there's something that can be negotiated.
Well, especially if you went by, as I see in this, where they went by number of residents, then our percentage of residents would certainly drop.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you right now, they are wrapping up one of the ongoing phases of construction, and it's going to be an absolutely stellar library. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And they have an idea lab, very creative, coffee bars going in. Really nice.
It's a beautiful library. There's no
Yeah.
question that
Yeah.
it's a community jewel. They have so many things going on there.
Yeah.
So I'm not, like I said, I'm not dissing the library. I just want the numbers out there for people to know the facts.
Ms. President?
Yes.
I'm not sure anybody's ever said dissing at this table before, so
It's the first time for everything.
That's right. I just wanted to reference that Beverly Hills is also a client of the library, involved in the library. They have there are 3 communities that, besides Birmingham, that are clients. And we're one of them. And we do have, our cost is the lesser of the 3. I'm not, also not advocating either way. I'm just letting you all know what it is.
Thank you. It gets hot in here. Next is Personnel Committee. Trustee Mashigian, would you like to introduce that?
Yes. A year ago, when we renewed Manager Martin's contract, I took a look and found that it made reference to a couple of things. One was that a personnel committee advisory would do the performance reviews and make recommendations on salary. And it occurred to me, to be in compliance, we should probably consider whether this is an option we should be working on. And I prepared a motion there you go, thanks. And it reads, is this the appropriate time to read it? Or no?
I mean, are you going to make the motion right now, or do we want us to talk about it?
Just discussion first. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like everybody's just seeing this for the first time right this second.
Yes. Luckily, it's one of my briefer statements. So. And probably make a few comments that the Personnel Advisory Committee, being comprised of our village president or president pro tem, is because they are the people working most closely with staff. And my experience has been that my reviews and any reviews of my employees were done by me or my immediate supervisor. And I thought that would be most appropriate. And that to get to a number 3 is to another trustee, a second council trustee that would be on the committee, and a qualified volunteer resident to serve. That is obviously for discussion. And formed immediately does not mean that it takes action immediately, but something that over the next several months, as we're working on roads and we're working on budget and pretty full agenda of items that we have, that we take some time to put this together for future application. And it will take time to find the right people.
A question I would have, is there a personnel file because I know I would always have personnel files for each employee, and you put notes of congratulations in them, you put the written annual review that's signed off by both parties, so it's a regular process. Do we have something that resembles that now in place?
Yes, we have a personnel file for all 3 of us.
And does it have annual performance reviews?
No, we don't do annual reviews.
So let me say, starting basically 5 years ago, and our former president is here, we started formalizing the process of annual reviews. Previous to that, there was really no formal process in place. The previous president started the process, and I've continued that process. So basically, we do an annual review with the 2 employees who have contracts that they report to the president, which is our treasurer and village manager. I do a written review, and then I discuss with our auditor what types of raises or what's going out and around in the community. I look at the local CPI to see the rate of inflation. I have a discussion with the treasurer about the budget. And then when the budget committee meets, I meet with the budget committee to go over my recommendation. And then council all gets a vote. So everybody sitting here gets to have a vote on that, on the raise part of it, the budget part of it. So that, all of that process is new in the last 5 years. Previous to that, there was no process. So we have made huge strides in holding people accountable and formalizing the process. So we only have 3 employees, unless you count the code enforcement officer who works once a week. But there's only 2 employees who are contracted and directly report to the president. So, just so we get that. And then, like I said, all the council people, every trustee gets a vote, ultimately.
But when we, go ahead.
I'm curious, who do you envision this being for? Is it for all 3? Is it for 1? What do you?
Well, it would be contract employees, and it would, reports to Ken.
Okay, so
that would be Ken would be.
Okay, so,
You know what? The idea is to fulfill what's in writing in a contract, and I don't. If this is something you don't feel needs to be formalized, and having a written record of meeting benchmarks and achieving goals and having exemplary performance is what I'm thinking it would be. All of your dates for budgets and staying on budget, and it would be nice to have for a written recommendation, but I would just simply suggest that you change the contract and take that out. That one element doesn't need to be in the contract.
Well, personnel committee doesn't designate how many people. It could be a committee of 1. Right?
Yeah. If you see it, that's true. Sure.
Well, I tend to agree that a committee should be maybe more than 1 person. Maybe 2 at least. So there's just some dialogue or interchange during the process.
Which is why I feel that when I meet with the budget committee, there's 3 people then. So I'm meeting with 2 other trustees.
But that meeting is strictly, is there enough money to pay this amount? But what this amount is not from the budget committee. That would be from the other member of the personnel committee. So I see that there is a difference.
Well, and I would say not necessarily. If the budget committee has an issue, that would be the time to bring it up.
Well, then maybe a member of the budget committee is on the personnel committee then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Ultimately, they kind of are, because they're in one of the steps of the process.
But do they see the written review, or are they participating in the written reviews?
I think it would be really difficult for somebody who isn't involved on a day-to-day basis. Yes.
What would the qualifications be of a volunteer resident? unless they're coming to the meetings, watching the meetings, being totally involved in everything that's going on. I don't see how you could find somebody, well, qualification could be anything, whatever you make the qualification to be. So I think it would have to be very clear as to what their role would be.
In my research on some of this, I'm looking at surrounding communities, and it's truly to a different scale, would be the city of Birmingham. Obviously, thousands more people, much larger community, the different funding that they have. They actually write up qualifications for being on the planning committee. I mean, having those experiences. And there's other, and I'm just throwing these out here because I can't remember verbatim, having an architectural degree to be on other committees. So I don't know that we need to go that far, but I think one thing we learned is the resources that we have in this village, and to have somebody that possibly has a history in HR and understands that working strictly from a performance standpoint. Yeah, that's pretty much, that would be an example.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly.
That you or me?
I don't know.
Kathy, what would the committee do? I mean, I'm trying to, they meet once right before a review time, or is this a year-long? Is this a year-long job? When I was back working, I at one point in time had a group of lawyers and paralegals that reported to me, and so because I had to do reviews, they gave me training, and one of the first things that they said was that nothing in the review should come as a surprise. That if you're doing a review and you're doing it right, that there's been year-long communication, and I don't know whether you anticipate this committee then being involved year-round in evaluating people, or whether it's just going to meet once prior to evaluations, and I'm just not sure you're going to find people that are going to know enough in terms of the day-to-day of what Bill does or what Ken does to be able to make evaluations. I'm not, this is I didn't know anything about this until today, so I'm not saying necessarily I agree or disagree. I'm just saying I'm not sure yet that we know enough about how this would work to even vote on it.
I think maybe you're right on that regard, and maybe we need to do research. Other smaller communities, do they all have personnel committees? Or is this not something, or if it is something that we're the only ones that don't, then clearly we need to look further at doing it. If, on the other hand, it's a low priority in other smaller communities, or they don't exist, well then, maybe that answers a question.
Right, and I guess the other thing I'm wondering about, and again, I'm not really feeling like I know enough to even vote on this at the present, but is there a perceived problem in the way that it's being handled now? And the only reason that I ask that is because in my conversations with both Bill and Ken, they've always seemed to me to be very willing to sit down and talk with people and entertain any ideas that those people have. I mean, and so I'm not sure we need a committee to talk with them about items that they might that a council member, for example, might think is a good idea, or a member of the community from that.
Well, that's our current staff, but to me, perhaps in the past, there may have been an employee in one of these positions who was, maybe they weren't always getting the numbers right or presenting all the numbers right, and maybe there were just a little too often, errors might have been occurring or something. So it's just in the way of formalizing who we are and how we operate as a village, not directed at our current existing employees, if we look at it that way, perhaps.
Yeah, and what you just said is actually a big part of it. At some point, we're all going to be gone. And what that record indicates is their willingness to interface with the community. I mean, it's when people come in and ask for things, they respond to that. And to have that kind of a record of helpfulness and responsiveness, whether we're here or not, then that record is there to be shared if that's appropriate. I'm just saying, I've always said that in my business, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And so I think, I'm just saying, in order to have a record of exemplary, and we do have exemplary people, that it would be nice to have that in writing. But if that doesn't appeal to you, if you don't think that it's necessary, then again, I think the solution would be to change the contract and remove that verbiage so that the contract is fully executed and there's no portion of it that stipulates something take place that doesn't take place. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do know what you mean. And just in that, when does the contract come up again, just out of curiosity? Is it June?
Yeah.
June? Just with regards to the contract in general, I know, and I think we talked about this last year, the way we've done in the past, we have like the 7th amendment to the contract or something like that. And I
remember.
I really want that to not happen. I really want to not have an 8th amendment.
Thank you.
And it should be amended and restated. And I'm not saying yes or no right now. I'm saying I don't really think I tonight know enough to vote one way or the other. I'd be happy to listen to more research, and I'd be happy to look at that contract and maybe take that language out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I just like to see, they always talk about doing audits. And if somebody comes in and does an audit, you want to be as 100%, as close to 100% accurate as you can. This is a small thing, but I think it's getting our house in order. So if we're not going to do it, then, of course, the other function, that the committee would do would be to discuss the compensation and what the current consumer price index and other tools you use to measure, so that it gives a guide and recommendation. The committee would be advisory, but it does would give a recommendation. That's all. That would be another function.
So when do we have to look at the contract again? Next year? June? Okay, so.
This is not for June, this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we could at least, when we look at the contract in June, we could, do people want to take that language out, the language that she's talking about?
Well, I'd like to look at the language.
I think we should look at the contract to begin with. Again, the contract's been the contract for 25 years or whatever. Like you say, there is documentation, there is a personnel file, there is a process, which, again, we have done a lot to formalize this process in the last 5 years from where it was.
Okay.
I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I have my contract.
I was going to say, Deb is sitting there with empty hands, so you haven't, sorry about that.
So, I'm not saying we can't look at the contract, but you kind of said, like, there's no documentation, there's no, and there is. There is.
Which section is it that has the language in it that you're looking at?
Oh, geez, I gave you all my copies.
Section 6,
It's section 6 and
compensation.
Compensation, page 2.
Page 2.
Oh, yeah, the very last sentence. Salary adjustments shall be determined by the village council based on performance reviews. Shall be determined by the village council
Yes.
based
So
on
not-
performance reviews and recommendations by the council's personnel committee. I mean, that does imply there's a little more than one person.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may.
Point of order, everybody. My contract is not on the agenda right now.
No, it's not.
So I would rather not just discuss it, like,
Yeah.
just have people start talking about it. I wouldn't mind if it was on the agenda, but it's not. And
We have a motion
I would
that's on the
rather,
agenda.
you know,
Well-
you're catching me a little off guard here. I'd rather that not happen again. I'm happy to talk about it if it's on the agenda and I can prepare. I haven't frankly looked at it in a long time. If I known, I would be prepared to have a discussion about it, but I'd rather not do that right now.
And I do say, if we open up the contract, there would be the opportunity for the employees to also change, add, delete things to their contract. So it wouldn't be just us saying we want to change this and that. If we open the contract, it's going to be open on both sides. So,
Really?
But all these amendments that we keep on adding, we said that we didn't want to do that. We didn't want 15 amendments onto a contract.
that's just
But
usually...
Right, but the amendments are just like, every year it says, instead of like from December 1st or January 1st, 2021, it says January 1st, 2022. It just,
Yeah.
we just sort of like been updating the
Changes
dates
the date, changes the set.
in the salary. That's been,
Right, the date and the salary is changed every year. Those are the amendments. They're not amendments to the contract verbiage. They're only the dates and the salary that are in the amendments.
What I was thinking here, and kind of what you were saying, Lisa, that you do have a budget committee, and I kind of put that together with maybe the contract, although I agree with Ken, with this, we're not discussing your contract. In that maybe the two are together, because one, if we don't have the money, we can't bump salaries. So I think I kind of look at the two and what you had brought up, and just glancing at this, maybe they're one and the same. Because it still takes 3 or 4 people to go through that and evaluate. And I think, and I agree with Kurt, I'm sorry, Mr. Trustee Jones, that this is, they need at least a month to think on this. I don't think, yeah.
I think that if we charge Kathy with going and checking out other communities as to whether they have, if this is something that all the other communities have, I think that's
Yeah.
something that we should know.
Or we just make it go away, the verbiage.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Because again, we are a very unique
We're
community.
tiny.
I mean,
Yeah.
if there's a problem, then I would like somebody to bring that to my attention. You know, this is sort of like, I've never had a conversation with somebody saying that there's an issue with an employee or their performance or anything like that. So if there's an issue, that issue should come to the president first, because they both report to the president. That's in their contract. So, you know, I think that would be the first step, and I haven't heard any complaints, and we went through the process last year, you know, again, the formal process, and I bring my recommendation based on all of the information that I've gathered in the performance review to the budget committee. At that point, that would be, you know, where another conversation could happen, would be with the budget committee. So now you would have 3 trustees. And then ultimately, we all get a vote at the end. So, if you don't like what's happening, then you vote no. So nobody's left out of the process, for sure.
So I would suggest that we table that.
Do we need a motion to table?
Do we need a motion?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, because there was a motion on,
I think Dirk
Sure,
had
go
a
ahead.
couple
Or,
comments.
wait, let's let Dirk. Dirk, did you have a couple comments?
The only thing I was going to say is that if you decided not to actually form the personnel committee, and I would say that the municipalities that I represent, the only one that has a personnel committee is West Bloomfield. Auburn Hills doesn't, Bloomfield Hills doesn't, Bloomfield Township doesn't. I think you're going to find that more communities don't have it than do have it. But in terms of cleaning up the language, I mean, that's something we have done in those amendments. Last year, we changed the words village administrator to village manager. So we could clean up that language by just eliminating that language, if that's the direction that council wants to go. But that's all.
Okay, thank you.
Is there?
You can lend information to this topic.
My name's Ben Templeton. I live at 23172 Old Orchard Trail. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I served on the trustee committee for 6 years, 2 years as a trustee and 4 years as the president. I can tell you from personal knowledge that the interaction I had with the village manager at the time, and actually I had a village manager of Kathy Hageman for 2 years and a village manager of Ken Martin for 4 years. The interaction between the trustee and the village manager is minimal compared to what the president interaction is. And I believe we actually did create a office memo at the time, or memorandum to create a policy. And what it read was that the president, there was a committee. It consisted of the 2 trustees on the budget committee and the president of the council. The president of the council was to do the review and bring their recommendations to that committee, and that committee would then discuss and decide on that. So there is a committee. If it's not been formalized, it may have been missed. It should have been. As a resident, I would feel very uncomfortable with a fellow resident being on that committee. One, there's 7 of you for a reason, so there's no disagreements. So 3 plus 1 member from the village would make 4. But I had the pleasure of voting and, well, actually electing and voting for all of you except for Ms. Hedge, who, from what I can tell, you've done a great job, so thank you. You were appointed, correct? And as a resident, we vote for you guys because we trust you to make these decisions. And to bring on a resident who we had no say in to make decisions about our village manager doesn't seem right to me. That's what we entrust you guys with. So as a resident, having a fellow resident who's not been elected, that doesn't make me comfortable. That's just my 2 cents. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Okay, so are we tabling this till next?
I'd like to table it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, we will table this till next month. Oh, I see, there was no motion on here. Okay, so we are going to move to old business, and I am going to ask, I thought there might be more people here, so I had planned on asking for public comment, just because I know the public has been very involved with the Tree and Woodland Protection Ordinance, as well as the Design Review Board. And so I'm going to ask the council if you'd like to, well, first of all, I guess let's have Dirk, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. Let's have Dirk introduce the first one, the amendment to Tree and Woodland Protection Ordinance, Chapter 93. This will be our first reading.
Right. Good evening. Before I drafted this ordinance amendment, I went back and watched the meeting of February 26, 2024 to make sure that I got it right. And there were 2 items that were discussed. One was mechanical equipment. That'll be a zoning ordinance amendment probably coming at the next meeting or maybe the meeting thereafter. But that's not a woodlands ordinance amendment. That's actually a zoning ordinance amendment. So what you do have, though, before you tonight is the Woodlands Ordinance Amendment that was requested. And basically what it does is currently there's a 20% threshold that triggers the preparation of a tree replacement plan in the permitting process for tree removal. We've reduced that number in the ordinance amendment to 10%. But you will note that at council's request, we said that the 10% does not include any regulated trees in the house building footprint and/or any regulated trees located in the area that extends 6 feet from the house building footprint. So you're not counting those trees and calculating that 10%. I think that, like I say, based on my review of the videotape of the meeting of February, I think that accurately sums up what council is requesting, and this is first reading, so you'll get a second crack at it, but that's really all I've got to add. Any questions, I can certainly try to answer.
Would it be appropriate to send this to the Planning Commission to have them peruse it and go through, as well as all the other information that has been brought to council?
You don't
as
need
with
to.
trees?
You don't need to. Certainly, you've got, as council, you've got the right to do that if you think this is beneficial, but because it's not a zoning ordinance amendment, it doesn't have to go to the Planning Commission. But you've got that right to send it to them for their input.
I think it'd be a great idea.
Certainly, it's up to council.
We're just talking about the tree and woodland, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So are you suggesting just sending that, the 20% to 10%?
No, I'd like them to see not only this, but also a lot of the other information that has come through on trees presented that I think, was it the DRB had presented too. I know there's a number of things out there of things to certainly consider. Some of the things I've considered that we don't have, and maybe I'm overstepping here, but to the point of maybe we have some kind of, that's what I'm looking for. If you want to cut down a tree, you have to get a permit, that kind of thing, and the permit costs X amount of money. And then you present to the village, i.e. call up Ken, I've got trees I'm going to cut down, here's what I want to do. There's a quick form that you fill out, boom, 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 pay your 20, 30, 40 bucks, whatever it is, and now we've got a record as to what went on in that particular incident or that particular tree cutting. For instance, we called, a quick example, we had a tree guy come out, got us a quote, when can you do it? Tomorrow. So we called Ken the next day, said, Ken, we're cutting down trees just to let you know in case somebody comes by. Quick note on that, I cut down 4 trees, we've already planted 6, so that kind of idea. That's kind of what I thought, maybe something that PC might want to wrestle with.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you cut down dead trees, right?
3 dead and 1 what I call a nuisance tree.
Okay. But just clarifying.
Yeah.
So, if you want to send this to planning, it seems like planning has its hands full with the zoning ordinance, but if this body wants to send this ordinance to planning, I guess that's acceptable. I mean, you could still go through with the first and second reading of this, right? Of the changing this number,
Yeah.
and having them still look at any other element of the ordinance. Is that fair? Does that Dirk, does that sound all right?
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Because this, and again, I went back and rewatched the tape of the meetings because I wanted to make sure I got it right. And this is the direction that the council had decided. So
Right.
you could introduce it tonight, consider the second reading in May, and then whatever other concerns you wanted the planning commission to look at, on a broader sense, you could certainly do that.
The other thing I was thinking too is because we talk about regulated trees, we don't define what a regulated tree is. Do we do that somewhere else, or could that be part of this?
It's in the definitions chapter.
It's right there.
Okay.
All
Maybe
deciduous
then-
trees having a 6-inch DBH or greater and coniferous trees 20 feet or greater.
Okay.
So it's defined.
Let me just understand, are you suggesting that the change of number from 20% to 10%, which is all that this change is doing, you want to have a lot more things in this particular section of this particular ordinance? You want to enhance this ordinance? Is that what you're asking?
I'm not suggesting that we change those numbers. I think
Those numbers are fine.
those numbers were, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you and I come up with, and we thought it was terrific.
Right.
No, I was enhancing it into a bit more of a regulation in that saying that, okay, you're going to cut down trees. There's a form you fill out, maybe a tree, maybe there's a $10, $20, $30 fee assigned to that. And it's just more of a regulation so that the village knows what was happening, more so than just even the 10% here. Because right now, no permit is required if you're cutting down less than 3 trees every 22 years, or every 2 years, I'm sorry. This way, then, we have a little bit more of a first-hand knowledge and or a record of what is being done to the trees. Because I know for a lot of people in this village, trees are a huge, huge thing. So this is more, not necessarily to appease them, but to give us an idea that says, okay, yes, you're right, they cut down trees, here's the form, this is what they said they did, and so forth. Like,
Yeah, it sounds as though this is going to become a much, much larger and more,
not necessarily, but maybe another, I don't know.
it's going to have procedures in it with forms that you, and things of that nature, right?
That's what I'm
Is
suggesting.
that within the purview of the ordinance?
Well, certainly you can look at the entire ordinance as a whole and make, all the changes you want to, subject to whatever case law is out there, because there is that Canton case. But you would have a lot of latitude to change it. But I think tonight probably the best thing to do is just introduce this for first reading, and then if you want to go further, then
Go from there, okay.
go from there.
So we can always pass this and then just add additional
Correct.
paragraphs
That's what we're saying, yeah.
That's correct.
as they become known.
You could
Is that
send it to planning.
Correct.
with you to move forward with this 20%?
Well, this is first reading, we're not voting on this anyway, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Just a very minor typo in item B. There's no space between the and 10% at the bottom. Footprint not being included in the calculation.
Yep, got it. I'll take care of it.
Good eye.
I had no other comments.
Did you have another comment, or?
No, I'm just going to
Okay.
segue into the DRB.
Okay.
Okay, so the first reading of that is complete.
Correct.
And we're moving into items 10B, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Can I, because I want to make sure it's clear, are we asking the planning commission to do something?
Not at this point.
Not at this point.
Okay, got it.
So tonight you have before you 3 items, 10B, 10C, and 10D. They're all the final readings of the group of ordinances pertaining to the dissolution of the DRB. Item 10B is actually repealing Chapter 153. This is a second reading, so the final reading of that. Item 10C is an ordinance amendments to the sign ordinance, Chapter 98, which deletes references to the DRB and the sign ordinance. And then finally, item 10D, which are zoning ordinance amendments, deleting the references to the DRB and the zoning ordinance, and also separating Section 3.16 into objective standards and subjective standards, utilizing the standards and requirements that currently exist in the ordinance, just putting those standards in 2 different buckets, if you will. There are 3 separate motions that you would have to adopt. I don't plan on going into any great detail on these. Certainly I can answer any questions. We've talked about this for a long time. Everybody's talked about it for a long time. I think everybody knows where they stand on it. But if there's any questions, certainly I can try to answer them. But the actions would be the 3 suggested motions that are contained in the Council of Communication from the village.
I just have a quick question. Sure. 10C, Chapter 98 on signs.
Yes.
That's simply transferring the sign approval to the Planning Commission?
Either the Planning Commission or the village manager, depending on the circumstance, but for the most part, it's the Planning Commission.
Okay, let's start with B. the repeal of Chapter 153, Design Review Board, second reading. If there's a motion, and then we get to discussion, Dirk can answer any more questions.
I would move the adoption of the ordinance amending repealing Chapter 153 Design Review Board of the Village of Bingham Farms Code of Ordinance as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Okay, that's...
This is a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
that's 157.
Motion passes. Unanimous. We'll move to C, amendments to Chapter 98 signs, second reading. Is there a motion?
I would move to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 98 signs of the Village Bingham Farms Code of Ordinances as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a couple of things. In Section 1, I think it's 98-2B, we say that permits, permanent signage for any division or cluster development may be permitted subject to approval by, I would like it must be permitted. In other words, you've got some kind of oversight with the village planning commission looking at it versus design review board, since we deleted that. And then
What section was that again?
Section 1, 98-2, page 1 of 4 is on the bottom.
98-02.
Yeah, section 1.
The way I'm reading that, it does require planning commission approval,
It says
It
may.
says may.
meaning the subdivision and development may have a sign, or they may choose not
If
to have a
approved.
sign, but if they choose to have a sign, it must be, it's
That-
pending the approval of
That's
planning commission.
exactly right, yeah. That's exactly-
Okay.
Okay, then I'm misreading this, okay.
Was there another one?
No, if that's the case, then I stand corrected.
Okay. Thank you. So there's been a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is the amendments to Chapter 157 zoning ordinance. This is the fourth reading.
I would move to adopt the zoning ordinance amendments amending Chapter 157 zoning ordinance of the Village of Bingham Farms Code of Ordinances as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
And I think what worries me sometimes is that there's no residential oversight on some of this stuff, and I think I'm in the right one. Section 5 of the ordinance, again, where we talk about planning commission going through some of this stuff. I just want to make sure that it's the planning commission looking at this, since we have deleted the DRB. But Section 8 of the ordinance, it still says Design Review Board review of proposed PUD plan. That's Section 8, Section 3, period, 21.7.6.2, point C.
Where are
There's a
you?
page number at the bottom of the page,
Yeah,
right?
what page are you on?
15 of 17.
Okay.
15,
All
okay,
right.
that's easier.
Sorry.
Section, the one that you're reading from Section 8.
Section 8 ordinance, yeah.
15 of 17. Okay, there it is, okay.
Oh, I see it.
Okay.
It's been through so many years. Matters of ice.
So that, and that is actually the title, so fortunately, it's not substantive, so we can just change that to the...
So, yeah, Planning Commission should review,
Any proposed plot plan.
yes.
Good catch.
We've gone through, so many eyes have looked at this, I think, yeah, we'll fix it.
And then on page 16 of 17, on section 12 of ordinance, plans, documents, and construction, following council action and any necessary design review considerations should be also any consideration by the Planning Commission, because they've already looked at it and are making recommendations to council.
That's why I didn't put planning commission there, because they had already looked at it.
Okay, so this is after,
This is
okay,
after the planning
All right.
commission made a recommendation to council, and council's taking it.
okay. I guess that's more my clarification than anything else, but yeah. Because I know that we went through a lot of it, excuse me, went through a lot of this, and we're basically removing design review board and adding planning commission to it, so that's why I wanted to check on that. Okay.
Anything else?
That's all I had.
Do we need to amend the motion that's already on the floor to include that one change, or is it?
No, I'll just, no, I'll take care of it.
All right.
That's just a typo.
So we have a motion, a second, we had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Dirk, this has been a very long, tedious process, I know. And I just really appreciate all your attention to detail and sort of helping us navigate these waters.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is the 2024-25 budget.
Thank you. Agenda item number 11, and speaking of arduous, long, and tedious, I wanted to give council, as I did last year, just a summary overview of the budget so that we have, and obviously we're working and will have scheduled meetings with the budget committee as things progress. But I broke it down basically into 3 sections: high-level overview, revenues, and expenses. When I first came on board, there was a format that I used last year, and we're going to continue to do that because it seems like it served us well. Right now, I'm in the process of gathering a bunch of information as I'm working on the budget, talking with vendors and talking with our service providers, and inputting it into that to review with the committee. I'm also reviewing a lot of the village agreements, or all the village agreements with our vendor service providers, to determine cross increase. The 2, as you may or you will see, that have risen to the top, I should say, are on an increased basis, are the fire budget increase and healthcare costs. And that is something, as far as healthcare, you see across when the police chief and the fire chief provide their budgets to me. That's always one area that seems like it's consistent, and it has been even in the private sector for the 38 years that I've worked there. It always just seems like that's the 2 high ones. Revenue basis, we received the state signed off the State Commission Assessment Roll Certification after the Board of Review, and from last year to this year, the tentative taxable value increased by 6.5%. So tentative taxable value last year was 204. $1 million, and this year it's coming in at $217.3 million. Just to give you just a little bit of information on that piece of it, based upon that, if we keep at the same 9 mills, it's going to increase our revenues. If everything is paid and everything, those tentative values hold, it'll add another $119,294 in taxable revenue to us. Considering that, though, based upon what the fire and police budget are going up, that's basically 1.5 months payment, or a portion of that, to be spent on that. State constitutional revenue sharing estimates are going to be increasing right now less than 1%. And the state estimated projection for Act 51 road money for the fiscal year 24-25 is increasing somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. And the reason for that range is I went back and looked at what the projections were from the prior year to exactly what we got, so it does vary. And when they say projections and estimate, that's exactly what it is. It's a projection. So just to kind of give you a feel of what that portion increased. Obviously, revenues don't increase as much as now that we're going to go on to the expense side. Expense side, it always seems like right now, from what I've gathered, the bottom line is typically 3%. On the top end line, obviously, fire is at 12.94%. So it's hit and miss within a lot of them, and I'll go through them here in a second. But you've got a range that's in there, but it just seems 3, 4, 5. Once we'll have one at 7, and then all of a sudden we get the spikes in the healthcare and the fire budget. So the police budget increased 4.3%, mostly based on, as Chief Roberts said, personnel costs, contracts, and healthcare. They have a section in it for maintenance on the police station. They did things last year that kind of brought up their server and computer updates. This year it's the maintenance. The SAD, which is a pass-through, increased 3%. It was actually 2.81%, but we're calling it 3. So the weighted average, if to the village of Bingham Farms, is 4% increase when we're talking about the police services that we receive from Franklin. The fire budget, as I mentioned before, is up 12.94%. For all the trustees, we know that we've met a couple times with them. It was a lot higher than that. They've now seen it come to bring it down to the 12.94%, so that we can hopefully get our footing and feet, something, a better footing to be able to address it in the coming years, because their costs are increasing, as the chief went through and indicated by line item for us. So we know that that's obviously one of the largest and healthy increase that's there. Salaries and benefit costs for the village staff, that's been well-covered travel territory in this meeting. But just to give you an idea, our healthcare costs, just for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, it's up 12%. It's like 11.96%. When I reach out to them also, to healthcare, for both Guardian and that, asking for projections, they give us a matrix based upon the current rate at this year, based upon age, and you go through that. But they're unwilling to project and give you any type of increase out further. When they go mid-year and they'll increase during the middle of our budget year, their increase comes through is when they publish it. So then all of a sudden it just goes up, and you get the bill, and it's like, all right, from last year that increase was about 12%. Our liability insurance that we get and cover for the village, it's projected to increase about 7% for us. Salary and policy review, we've discussed that. I provide to Lisa and the committee, I go and look at the CPI as it's been done in the year, done in years past. I also look at what the current market is. I also add and even go back and look and see what Social Security Administration, what their increases. I know that's different, but I just kind of give a broad kind of data points that are out there, provide that to the Budget Committee, to Lisa. Lisa, as she indicated, Lisa, the President, has talked to Raina because she has a very good range as being auditor for multiple municipalities, gets to see that portion in their budget process across a number of different counties of clients that she has, and gives her input as well. We discussed the Baldwin library increase. This year it's 3%, and we will be paying the amount, as we discussed earlier, is $132,942 for the new budget year for their services. Car Trucking, who does our rubbish pickup along with our recycling and yard waste, their last increase, when they came and their contract was up, was 5% increase. And I wasn't here at the time, but my understanding was a lot of that was due to cost of fuel at the time, and things like that. This agreement that you approved back in November, 2 Novembers ago, I believe, that expires on January 31st of 2025. So what I'm doing there is I'm going to just put in 5%. I've asked them if they can give me some ideas of what their projected increase will be. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I just followed up with them again today. Haven't heard from them. So I have question marks on the increase because I don't know what it is. But if we look at it right now through our contract, that would leave us with 5 months basically in this budget cycle, this new budget cycle, that we wouldn't know what the increase would be. So again, I'm trying to figure out what it is, any information that they can give me to kind of help better project budget on that line item is greatly appreciated, and of course I will share that with the budget committee. The last item that I look at is our rent for our offices here. It's going to be increased about 2%, which is one of the lowest ones. That was a multi-year contract. It goes until, I believe, September of 25. But it's been 2%, and like I said, that's one of the lowest ones that we've seen as far as a percent increase. So again, just wanted to provide you with some preliminary summary of where we're at as I continue to pull things together very quickly here to review with the committee. All the numbers will fall in place, and we'll find out just exactly where we are, how good, how bad the situation is, and obviously put a plan in place to get a budget approval. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm surprised by the fact that the taxable value increased by 6.5%. I thought there was something that limited it to inflation or 5%, whichever was higher.
Unless there's new construction or additions.
Is that it's new construction?
Sales of property will bump that taxable value too.
Right, so what happens is if there is, when the assessor goes out and looks at it, right, if there's been additions to it, that adds it. Sales will uncap the property value for Headley, and it'll reset it. So those, and we've had some properties that are in the village that brought quite in, pretty penny as far as sales of that property. So, but yes, it's 6.5%. The tentative, again, I want to stress that the tentative taxable value.
Okay. Just one or two other quick
Yeah,
comments
sure.
here. So one of the things that I'm hoping that we can do in our budget this year is that in prior years, we have always had the $150,000 that we set aside for the roads was sort of like below the line. It was just sort of a, if we have that much money left over at the end of the year, we'll put it towards the roads. And I know we had a conversation with Raina at one point in time, and she said that we could do it
Above the line.
yes.
Like
the police budget and everything else, and I'm hoping that we can do that this year, so it's not something that we just get to the end of the year and then we decide,
Yep.
well, we don't have enough money or whatever.
Yep.
And then the second thing is good luck with having our 5th year in a row without raising the millage rate, given the fire thing. But one or two things that I would mention that and I think we've talked about this before, but just for the other people who were on the committee, the way we had done the pension fund, when we made the additional contribution of $30,000, we put it in a special account so that it does not go to reduce the amount we owe on a yearly basis. We can take that money and the other $30,000 and move it into the general account, and it will reduce the monthly amount that we have to pay for the MERS thing. And the second part of that is that I think we have the ability to ask for a phase-in period for our catch-up contributions. And we have not asked for the phase-in period to date because we wanted to try to catch up as much as possible. But if we're going to have to raise the millage rate, I would hope that we might consider asking for the catch-up phase so that we can maybe raise taxes less or hopefully not at all.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
So Trustee Jones, to address both of your questions. Number one, Trustee Jones comes in my office and we talk a lot about and review things. You know that I have that sticker that's right on my display, and I did talk to Raina about it, about moving the 150 from below the line to above the line, and that is in the works. The second thing is, you're absolutely right, there is one other lever within MERS that we can try to back down so that the contribution gives us a little bit more breathing room. And you're absolutely right as well, the $30,000 that we, I don't want to say donated, we contributed to within the plan is in its own separate account, if you will, within MERS. So you're right on all the above.
Thank you.
Any other questions that anyone has?
Bill, you've laid out all the, the percentage increases. Now, is that covered in the $207.3 million that we might possibly be getting in taxes?
That is the $64,000 question, and until...
That's why I had to ask it.
And I appreciate that. As it gets filled in, the budget will flow down, and then I'll look at the bottom line and say, all right, do we have enough? Is there more cuts? Where else? I mean,
Or do we need
where
a
are we at?
millage or
Right.
what have you? Okay.
Right. We also remember there's a contingency fund that we use, and I don't want to say it's a plug number, but that's something that can move up and down, and then based upon where we ended the last year audited numbers as far as fund balances and things, that's also a line item that figures into the entire process and spreadsheet.
So what will you be presenting then to the public at the public meeting? Pretty much this?
No, it's going to be the proposed actual budget.
Okay.
So last year, we kind of I'm trying to get it moved closer. Last year, we went all the way, since it was the first year, we went all the way till June before we approved the budget. We have to approve the budget before the end of June,
right,
which is obviously the end of the fiscal year. This year, I wanted to move it at least up 30 days to take a look at it, especially with things with all the moving parts in it, right? So that if something happens and we've got to push it, we still have to the end of June to modify the proposed budget that we'll review, which brings us right into the next section, which is set the public hearing for May 20th, where we'll have the proposed budget, we'll review it like we did last year, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So this is really just kind of, okay, here's what we're dealing with. Now
This is just a summary for you to kind of give you a touch point of where things are. It's kind of I don't want to say the crystal ball, but it's kind of formulating in there just to give us some information of what we're seeing cost increases and what we're seeing as far as what the revenue projection is.
Okay.
Yes, Trustee Howard.
Did you try to populate your cells and hit the bottom line yet?
No, because a lot of it still is in question. I'm waiting for that, to push that button
you
and
really
see what
don't yet have
what's
a
behind
gut.
door number one.
How close we are.
I have not.
I don't know how you can restrict yourself from saying, what if? I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd have to know.
Now you know what the roads committee's going through.
Yeah.
Dealing with unknowns.
All right, so we need to set the public hearing for May 20th, 2024.
Do you need a motion for that?
It's a
Resolution.
Resolution. So,
I would move the resolution that appears in our package.
Second.
any discussion? Roll call?
Jones.
Yes.
You're still here?
Crable.
Yes.
Mashigian.
Yes.
Blackburn.
Yes.
Hageman.
Aye.
Hedge.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Bill, when you set up the meeting for the budget committee, can you include the millage rates of the surrounding communities? I think that should be, I'd like to look at that. I
Sure.
think that should be shared with council at the next meeting when they vote.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Let me just make a real quick note.
Once you write your note, we can move to the treasurer's report for the approval of April 2024 bills.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. All right, item number 12 on the agenda, Treasurer's Report. I know you guys all look forward to this. We have two motions, as we do every month. First one I want to just cover through is approve the bills for April 2024. As I always go through, check disbursements for the general fund from March 22nd, 2024 through April 19th, 2024, totaled to be $190,088.33. Checks dispersed for the same time frame, March 22nd, 2024 through April 19th, 2024 for the gas and weight account was $1,660 even, for a total of $191,748.33 that was dispersed. If there's any questions, obviously in your packet, as there is every month, there's a detail of every vendor and amount that was paid for both general and gas and weight.
I move to approve the bills as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Next motion that is up in the batter's box is approval of the financial statements for March 2024. And in council's packet, you will see for the period ending 3/31/2024, a listing of the expenditures for both revenue and expenses, as well as our actual investments. So let me just first say, are there any questions regarding the revenue and expense portion of the report that's in your packet? Seeing none, we'll move to the investments for March 2024. Again, very familiarized with the format, broke it down between the general fund and the road fund. We've added, I think, one within the general fund. We'll also see that Oakland County Pool has declined and come down from last month. The reason for that is typically within this time frame of the budget year, I move money over from that to our general fund to meet our daily, monthly expenses as they happen. So it comes out when revenue comes in, then we repopulate and distribute it back into those fund investments. But what I do is I pull it from the local government investment pool, because that's the one that has the least amount of interest for the funds that are in there. So I take it from that versus the Michigan Class Pool Fund, which is still performing very, very well. On average last month, it was 5.41% for the month, so we're just continuing to make sure that we maximize that as much as we can, staying within the limits that the council has approved for each depository. Other than that, is there any questions that council has on either one of the general fund or the road funds within the investments?
If not, we need a motion to accept the financial statements for March 2024.
I will so move.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next is trustee comments. I'm going to go around the table.
I just want to thank Bill for doing, to me, such a good job with the budget and making it easy to understand with your summary. I think it's good to have the information ahead of time as best you can to get us prepared.
30 very short days between today and May meeting, where all the road information has to be presented for a decision. The budget has to be presented for review. A lot of work. I think there's going to have to be a lot of separate subcommittee meetings going on to make this all happen. So I'm I'm available as soon as we can meet, Bill.
I don't have anything.
I just appreciate those of you working on the Budget Committee. My numbers have never been my strength, so I appreciate your contributions. Thank you.
Nothing for me.
I just wanted to, a quick shout out to both Ken and Yev for their work with the road committee. You know, we didn't really anticipate, I don't think, that we were going to be able to televise those, and somehow the two of them put together a system where we could do that. And I think I might have heard that most of that equipment is Ken's equipment, and you know, this is like going above and beyond the call of duty, and I certainly appreciate his efforts, both of their efforts, staying late and setting that up and doing it so that we can have as much community involvement in this as we can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have no comment. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Meeting adjourned, 9:06 PM.